Ari. Thank you very much, dear David, and thank you, Rabbi Spitz. I'm so honored and moved and happy to see all of you and to host you at home here in Tel Aviv. Welcome to Israel, first of all. I love meeting people on the first day of an Israel trip, and you are not jet-lagged and not tired yet, and not after a long flight, so this is a good thing. Some people are finding Zoom meetings hard, but I must say that I love seeing all these faces, seeing so many eyes and faces of people I don't know yet, and I'm just happy to be with you, and I'm honored to be part of your program and try to open your days in Israel. It is very hot here in Tel Aviv today. It's the first day we were allowed to go to the beach without being afraid of the police taking us out. The sea, the Mediterranean is very flat and beautiful, and because there are not many people, the fish are coming out. And so next year when you come, you can snorkel even in Tel Aviv and swim with the fish. I live here in this house where I was born. My parents lived here since the 50s. And so you're welcome, and I'm really happy to be with you. Where shall I start? I want to start saying that I am, how would I say, a spiritual or religious in the sense of the feeling of hoping, speaking to something that is beyond what we understand in this world, and hoping that someone is listening to me. And at the same time, I'm a secular Jew, a proud secular Israeli Jew. And that is one of those contradictions Rabbi Spitz talked about that I will try to unfold and explain how one can be a religious secular person. I'll tell you a little bit about, or maybe I'll have an opportunity to say a little more about the Jewish Renaissance movement, or the Jewish renewal movement, or the Israeli Judaism. We have many names. Hitchadshut Yehudit, it's called in Hebrew, that I'm a part of. And as was said before, I was co-founding the first egalitarian Bet Midrash for women and men, secular and through Orthodox. I want to say to David that I love Kivunim, and I had the great opportunity to travel with you to Morocco, where I learned a lot, and Peter Geffen is a dear friend. And so I'll try to tell you a little bit about how come a nice Jewish girl like me from Tel Aviv, how did I find myself doing my PhD in the Talmud department in the Jerusalem, in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and how come the university wasn't sufficient for me, and I founded a Bet Midrash, which is the way that I study until today. This morning we finished on Zoom a tractate of Horayot, and tomorrow hopefully we'll start a new Talmudic tractate of Shavuot. The study of Talmud became something, maybe the core of my being, of my life, and influenced my life in many ways. And still I did not become an affiliated Jew. I do not belong to any movement, and I don't want to, I love to work together with all movements, but I feel that for myself the right way is to work outside of, at least in Israel, of organized Jewish movements. So it all started here in Tel Aviv. I want to tell you more about Tel Aviv. Usually when you come to these Israeli trips, most of the content is happening in Jerusalem. Most of the Jewish experience is in Jerusalem, looking at ultra-Orthodox Jews, seeing a real Shabbat in Jerusalem. And that's fine, and I love Jerusalem like everyone else. But I want to introduce to you Tel Aviv today as a very Jewish city. I think Tel Aviv is the only big, how do you say it in English, secular Jewish big city where all the streets, all the names of the streets, all the language in Tel Aviv, all the movies and all the literature and all the poetry, all the groups that are writing Israeli culture, the dancers, the musicians, the people that are hosting or writing television movies and series, all of them, 90% of them live in Tel Aviv. Usually when groups from America come, they come to shop in Tel Aviv or to go to the airport or go to the beach. I want today to invite you to see Tel Aviv as a very Jewish experience. Tel Aviv was founded as the first Hebrew city, עיר העברית הראשונה. Very proudly, the movement that I'm maybe following of Echad Ha'am and Chaim Nachman Bialik, that were Eastern European Jews that came out of the shtetl, left organized Orthodoxy, and called themselves Hebrews. They believed in Hebrew culture. So they said, and I feel that I am following them, that Judaism is not only a religion. And even if people come out of the halachic way of life and the organized religion, it doesn't mean that they are secular in the way that they let all of their Jewishness go. Those people in the beginning of the 19th century felt that they are first and foremost Jews, and that's what I feel. If you ask me what I am, who I am, first of all, I'm a Jew. Then I'm a woman, then I'm part of my family, I'm an Israeli, but more than anything else, I'm a Jew. And yet, I did not grow up in a halachic family, and I didn't choose to live halachic life. I did choose to educate myself and to know my Bible, Mishnah, Talmud, Kabbalah, Hasidic literature, and then Hebrew culture, literature, poetry, film, theater, and so on. The kind of Jewishness that I belong to is cultural Judaism, which says that like the English know their literature, they know their Shakespeare and theater and so on, or the Russians will read their Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, and the French will read their philosophy and art, and the Germans will know theirs. We, the Jews as Hebrews, should be educated and well-versed in our great books. And once a person knows where we came from, literature and in culture, we know where we came from and we know who we are. And then usually we know where we want to go. So I grew up, I see Tel Aviv, first of all, as a place that is filled with and like all over the place you can meet and see and experience Jewish culture in the names of the streets, in the music that you hear on the radio, on the shows that you see on television, in public. It's out there. It's not only in synagogues. It's not only in Jewish community centers. The street is Jewish. The radio is Jewish. I always feel that on Friday morning, the birds on the boulevard are singing different songs because Shabbat is coming. You feel Saturday in the street, the shops close and people wear different things. You know, Friday morning we don't work and we sit in cafes and we read the weekend papers, and you feel that Shabbat is coming, although it doesn't always look like the traditional Orthodox way of Shabbat, but it's very much alive. Israel, as I see it, is an option of deep, serious, wholesome, rich Jewish life that is connected to culture as a whole, culture all over the world, but is speaking in our own language through the Jewish lens through which we see everything. My feminism, I see through the Jewish lens, and history and politics, and whatever I am confronting, I go back to my books, and I try to think, what can I learn from my ancestors? What would they have said about today's politics, about what we do to the world, about women's role in leadership, and so on. So what I'm saying is that I grew up in an Israel that had a split between religious and secular, and it was like black or white, and maybe Republican and Democrats. And I did not want to buy into either of those. I feel at home in every synagogue I walk into. I love being in a synagogue. I love being called up to the Torah. And at the same time, my Jewish life is a positive choice of not being halachic. It's not that I keep a few mitzvot. I did not accept the yoke of mitzvot on myself, but I did choose to live my life as a Jew in the richest way that I possibly can. So when I went, first of all, I want to say that a lot of the way that I became who I am is because I stayed for a year when I was an adolescent in an English-speaking country in Australia. And then we spent 3 years in New Jersey. And also I found now from my father's letters in 1955, he spent 6 months in Manhattan, Manhattan, yeah. And I think that my meeting with American Judaism shook me, and with Australian conservative and Reform Judaism shook me and showed me that it's possible to be part of a community, take part in prayer, and still be myself. And when we came back home, before I was born, my father decided to start doing Kiddush every Friday night. And when I came back home, I knew that I'm allowed to study Torah, that I can do what I saw in North America and in Australia. So I just want to say thank you, and that you had a great part in it. While I took this option from America and I brought it to Israel, it changed to suit what Israel needed at the time. And so after my army service, I wanted to study Judaism, but all the places that I was looking at to study could only accept men that are religious. And I was a woman that is secular. And so there was no place I could study. I remember I watched Yentl and Barbara Streisand. I was like taken into the movie, and I saw this beautiful shtetl that she wants to go into. I was like completely identified with her, but I looked at her solution of dressing as a man, and I felt it will not work in my case. And so I have to find another way. By the way, when I was serving in the Knesset, Barbara Streisand came to Israel, and I guess she heard from someone that I was influenced by her Yentl, and she invited me to her concert and backstage, and I was very intimidated, and I didn't know what to say to her, but she was very sweet. Anyway, so I decided that first of all, I don't want to be ignorant. We grew up on a lot of Bible in the Israeli public school, a lot of Hebrew literature, history, Hebrew, of course, but I did not know anything rabbinic. We learned very little of Mishnah, Talmud, Kabbalah, Hasidism and so forth, and prayer. So I decided that I have to fill in the hole that I felt. I felt like a part of my family was taken away from me. That, you know, the famous baby that was thrown together with the bathwater when the first Israeli secular Zionists came to Israel and they wanted to build themselves as new Jews, and they threw back what they had from their parents' homes and did not give it on to us as their children. My father came from Bulgaria, my mother came from Germany, but they only spoke Hebrew because they did not speak the same languages. They spoke a lot of languages, but not the same. So I only had hints of their background, and we grew up as this new generation of Sabarim, of Israelis, and I saw that my parents are looking at us as if we will be something new, something healthy, something brave, and so on. And some of it did work, you know. Brave is not exactly, I'm not sure about, but we lost a lot by this trying to invent a new kind of Jew. And some of what we lost, I tried to learn back and feel myself. So I went to the best place, to the Hebrew University, and inside the Hebrew University, there's a Talmud department that's very difficult to get into, and all of the people in class with me had beards. I was the only one without a beard. And I did not go to yeshiva like they did, and I didn't know how to read the Talmud as they knew. And the beginning was quite challenging. But the professors kind of backed me up and told me they played a lot of basketball in yeshiva. If you'll be serious, you can know everything they know. I still owe gratitude to Professor Zussman, who was we were so afraid of him, we couldn't even speak, but he took me to the side and he told me, if you learn well, you'll know everything they know. And I did my best, and I learned my daily page, and slowly I finished my master's and PhD, and felt that although the academia is a wonderful, interesting place, it's not what I was looking for. I was looking for a Torah that you can live, something that will influence my life, and then maybe I can influence the public space. I want something that you don't only look at from afar, academically as research. I want to eat it. I want to live it. I want to know what to do with it. And so I wish to get into a Bet Midrash, and as I told you, all the Bet Midrash way, yeshiva way of study were close to me. I had to establish a new one that will have me. And so we established a place called Elul. It was the month of Elul. Was the September 89. And it was the first time that Israel had a place where secular Jews are not coming to be hosted by Orthodox, to be taught by Orthodox Jews, to be lekarev, to make them closer to Judaism, but we formed the Bet Midrash as partners. We ran it together, we decided on the curriculum together, we fundraised together, and we made all the decisions together, and I was heading it with an Orthodox partner. And so we started studying at Elul, not only the classic Jewish text, but also Kafka and Yonah Volach and Bialik and Brenner, all the new texts that were very important to us as secular Jews, that the classic Torah didn't stop in the Middle Ages, but there's a lot to learn after it that is part of what makes us serious Jews today. There was a lot of quarrel about what to study and how to study. We had a lot of time because it was before we all got married and had kids. And slowly, with the years, we formed families, and Elul started a whole movement, and many other groups in Israel started studying together, religious together with Orthodox. And people that left Orthodoxy started understanding that even if they live halachic life, it doesn't mean that they're not Jews anymore, or they can't work with the text, and new music came about, and new film came about, and a whole movement of Jewish culture that is not necessarily this or that, but something that combines this and that together. After a few years, it was the assassination of Rabin, and I was shocked, like all of us. And at some point, I decided to move back from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv and to found a new institution called Alma, Home for Hebrew Culture, in the center of Tel Aviv on Rothschild Boulevard, and to run it by myself, not anymore together with modern Orthodox Jews, but by myself, with my community, mostly secular people. And at Alma, I chose to invite to study the gatekeepers of Israeli culture, the best authors, the best poets, the dancers, the musicians, the television people, and tell them, don't be afraid of the texts. They belong to you. You own them. You can study them, and then your talent will tell you what to do with them. It's not necessarily, you don't have to read them always with someone, a moderator that will tell you what they mean. You're an intelligent person. You can just read and know what they mean. We all speak Hebrew, and Aramaic is like Pig Latin. If you speak Hebrew, you speak Aramaic. Don't be afraid. We're not going to make you do things you don't want to do. They're always afraid that we are trying to make them religious in some way. And I said, you know, this is a safe zone. Just come and study. And slowly, one by one, very famous artists in Israel. I can't impress you with the names because I'm not sure that you'll be impressed, but they impress Israelis. It was Yoni Rechter, Yehudit Ravitz, Yehuda Eder, Tzivi Geval, Ariam, so like very big names. As if I would tell you that Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and who else? Elton John, and who's Jewish? I'm not sure. And Barbara Streisand and Madonna came to study. And they did. And they first came like wild, I always felt that they're like wild deer, that I have to feed them very slowly so they won't run away. But then they started feeling comfortable. And you see on television things like Fauda and Shtisel, and many movies and many series and a lot of music. And then the Piyut movement started, and the Eastern music to prayer started also coming into public radio and television. And what I am very happy about, and I only had one little role in it, it wasn't my doing, but being a part of this wave, of this movement that made Israeli culture very vivid and rich. And you can today open radio in the morning and you'll hear an ancient Mishnah in music, or you'll hear some Rabbi Nachman. I now did 2 children books, one of Mishnah, I have it here somewhere. It's called a story about a rainy day story. It was published on PJ Library for little secular Israeli kids that don't know the story of Hanina ben Dosa, and I want them to grow up knowing it. And then I did another of Rabbi Nachman, a Hasidic story, again, for little girls and boys of secular families that will not learn Hasidut, but I want them to have the building blocks of culture since they're very little kids. And so then at Alma, the first year of Alma, that's 20 some years ago, I said, let's do a holiday of Shavuot, of the all-night study of Shavuot when we receive the Torah, that is usually celebrated in synagogues, and rabbis are teaching all night. Let's do it at Alma or in a community center, and we'll bring our musicians and philosophers and all the people that study with us, and we'll have a great night of study, and in the morning when the Jerusalem people go to the Wailing Wall, we'll go to the beach, and we did. And it was the first time secular Israelis celebrated Shavuot this way. The first year we had some 80 people, second year a few hundred. Then we got to having 3,000 people in the Tel Aviv Museum all night with all the galleries open and classes in every different gallery and music and film and dance. And it started spreading all over Israel. And when I came to work at UJA New York, I wanted to do it at the JCC in the Upper West Side. And I went to a few Jewish institutions and I said, can I please do Tikkun Leil Shavuot here? And they said, no, sorry, it's a holiday, we're closed. And I said, what do you mean? It's a holiday, you have to be open. But they didn't know the concept. And so a beautiful, wonderful rabbi from the Hillel at NYU. I'm sorry, his name escapes me. He gave me the Hillel at NYU and we did it there and it was a great success. And then the Upper West Side said, next year, do it with us. And that became a huge Tikkun Leil Shavuot. It was called the Alma Tikkun the first years until someone got the name. And I saw a queue all around Amsterdam Avenue of people queuing up to come and study all night. And I was so happy that I always received from North America that I can bring something that we maybe can add to our colleagues there. And so all the holidays, Slichot and the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, and Shavuot, and Purim, and Pesach. We do our version of cultural holidays. We do it with all our hearts. We do it seriously. We do not do it in synagogues. We do it where we meet our community, which is usually either at Alma, it could be on television, it could be in the radio. The whole Zionist concept of a country that is a synagogue, that you don't have to go into a synagogue because the country is an open air synagogue, and everything in Israel, in my view, is Jewish culture. I have a lot more to say, but Ari told me to speak for 40 minutes, so I'm happy to stop and take some questions, and because I do want to talk to you, and maybe we'll start a conversation. Does that work, Ari?
I think that's great. So I'll start with a few questions.
Please.
We have close to 190 people on our trip, so it's I know it's very crowded for you guys, but please ask questions.
Wow.
And we'll try to get those questions asked. So let's just talk about what happened recently. So the United States, we had high holidays, and non-Orthodox synagogues all went online to service members. Our synagogue had great services, and one of the coolest things for us was that you could go to in California, you could wake up in the morning and go to a service in New York, and then go to your service in California. But in Israel, it was different. What were the holidays like for you, given everything you've told us now? And so how was Sukkot and Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah when people couldn't go to synagogues? What was the experience like for the general population?
I actually kind of liked it because I always feel that on holidays, the religious people are going away and are closing themselves behind walls. And this year, everyone was out together. And there were prayers in every street for people upstairs to hear. If someone was sick, 10 people would come under their balcony and give them the option to pray with them. There was a lot happening outside. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of lawn between the houses. And so there were many sukkot, like 4 different sukkot in front of our building. And people were safely walking between them. And again, we did an online program for Slichot, and I took part at the BJ in New York, but I felt the luxury of having a Jewish street. And so you feel the high holiday or Yom Kippur, when you walk on the nakedness of a 6-lane highway, the Ayalon highway is all empty of cars, and you see little kids on their tricycles going on the wrong side of the road from traffic. That is a very special feeling, and everything is very quiet. You hear people walking, you have a kind of something very mellow. And so there is the worry of sickness, and we try to keep safe, and there's loneliness for people who are alone at home. It wasn't the best holiday, but in the sense of not having buildings of synagogues, I found it was kind of nice.
Let's talk about your time in the Knesset. So I have so many questions there. Were you very nervous with the famous, I mean, we all read about your teaching from the Talmud when you were up there. Were you very nervous when you got up in front of the Knesset to teach them Talmud, and what was the reaction you got to that?
If you don't mind, I want to say a sentence before that. Why did I go to politics? I went to politics because this movement that I'm trying to tell you about of the Renaissance of Judaism, or reclaiming Judaism for secular people, is a movement that is completely outside any government support. And as you know, it's very hard to fundraise for an educational program for so many years. It's been now 30, maybe 40 years that we are on our own outside the establishment. A lot of money is given in Israel to Jewish culture, or Jewish religion, but nothing is given to the liberal movements and to secular Jews even more. And I decided, instead of barking outside the window, to just walk in, sit at the table, and explain that we need support to live our life as Jews in a serious and good and way that we choose to. And so that's why I decided that at that time of my life, the right thing to do is to stop the education program and to go into another kind of adult education program, which is the Knesset. Now, when we just walked into the Knesset, and I didn't know yet how to do anything, they told us that someone from my party, Yesh Atid, told me that I have to prepare some 15 minutes for tomorrow. And I didn't know what to do. I'm not a politician, so I said, I'll teach something. That's what I can do. And I brought my Talmud with me. And when it was time for me to get up, I was shaking completely. My legs were shaking. And it's a very huge honor and place to stand there. I wished my parents were alive and to see me. But if I may say the truth, I didn't think anyone is listening to me. The Knesset members are talking between themselves. There weren't so many people there. I had one guest, a friend of mine that came to see me. But so I read what I prepared, and I didn't realize that it's taped. I didn't know that everything is taped. And so I thought, at least one person heard me, and then the chair, the deputy speaker, later on I became also a deputy speaker. The deputy speaker was an ultra-Orthodox man from Shas, from the Eastern ultra-Orthodox party. And he was a very nice, kind man, and he was interested in what I was teaching. So he said something about it, and we started studying. Now the people on the Knesset members thought that he's fighting with me because I'm a woman, what they expected him to be against me, and they woke up to save me, and so they started listening, and so it became a whole affair. And later on, when I came down, still shaking, many people from different parties came to say, you know, Shar Koach. And I remember even Netanyahu came to say, he was, you know, he appreciated what I said, and I was surprised and happy. And a few days later, somebody put it online, and then a whole connection to so many people started, and I was shocked. I just understood what the web is. I got letters from Switzerland, from rabbis, from people from America, and I felt again that we are so close to each other, and that there's so much we have in common, and that it's such a shame that we are not connected more, and that your voices are so needed in Israel, and all of that. And so, yeah,
that's the famous beginning. What, I forget how long you served in Knesset, but tell me about
2.5 years, 2 and some months, 2 years and some months.
Can you tell us one or two things that you take away from that experience being in Knesset?
You know, it's not the best time to talk about politics, either here or in North America. But I must say that I'm honored that I had the opportunity. I learned a lot, and that I still believe in democracy. I don't see any better way. And that I do, how do you say? I do invite good young people to go to politics, because if you're not at the table, you are on the table. I'm quoting a very smart Black lady that came from Atlanta and spoke to me in the Knesset. And she said, if we're not here making the decisions, someone will make the decisions about us. And so that's the first thing. I think to legislate is a beautiful thing that one can do. I met very serious and good people from all the different parties. The good and the bad are not divided by left and right, or, you know. There are some good and serious people in all parties. It's not an easy time. It was a difficult time. There was a lot of fighting and blocking each other. There is a lot to improve in leadership. And if you ask me what needs to be done, the challenge is the basic question of the identity of Israel as a Jewish democratic state. And I think that if we could find a way that all of us can agree on what is a homeland of all Jews in the land of Israel, that is democratic and is sensitive to minorities and is proud of its heritage, if we could come to such an agreement, everything else would fall into place. I think we are in some ways losing the story, losing the reason, the logic of what we're doing here together.
I want to jump to Alma today. You and I spoke last week, and I asked you what Alma was doing, and I was very impressed with some of your programs. So I wanted you to share your programs I think it's called Machloket was one example, and then ask you, like, who has the clientele changed? Do you have different people now who are at Alma, and do you see this Renaissance in Judaism still growing in Israel, or has it slowed down a bit? But let's start with, tell us about Machloket and other examples of what you're teaching or doing at Alma.
Thank you. So the basic program at Alma are the fellowship program, which is a program where we try to educate the tomorrow's leaders, the thinkers, the builders of culture. It is not an academic program. It's a program of it's a year long, twice a week, and we choose carefully our young people after their bachelors. They can come to us, and we give them the best of Jewish culture and cultural studies, and like that's the base of Alma. That's like our koilel. And it's important for me that secular people will always also have a way to be scholars, to be Talmidei Chachamim v'Talmidot Chachamim, because without Jewish scholars, we won't be who we are. Machloket is dispute. We are trying to, we built, and we already have 10 machlokot online. We invite two smart intellectuals that are good thinkers in Israel that have a dispute about any deep question that the Israelis don't agree on. It could be something to do with the coronavirus. It could be something about marriage, about their rabbinate, about kosher, about politics, anything that people don't agree on. And usually, and you know this, I felt it in America last year, there's some questions that you don't even want to sit with a person that thinks differently. They make you so upset that you never even hear them to the end. So what we try to do is build a dispute like you learn in America to do, how do you call it?
Debate.
To do debates. So we build it like a Jewish debate.
Not like our contemporary debates, but historic debates usually.
Like what they're supposed to be. So we are building on the Talmudic debate that believes that in order to understand something to its depth, you need someone that doesn't agree with you, that is the same strength as you. And when you talk to them, you listen to them to the end, and then you invite them to understand what is going on your mind through this movement between you visiting their mind, like going over the bridge and looking at the landscape of their mind, and then inviting them to come to your mind and understand you. Through this dispute, the question is opened up, and you can find a solution or a compromise that is much better than going on with a fight. So that's something that we're trying to show the Israeli culture, that there's an option to talk about things, the territories, the peace agreement, anything that usually people only quarrel about and become very nasty to each other. You can take it to the depth and understand, where do you come from? What are you afraid of? What makes you think that? And so that is one thing that we are working on and trying to put it online on YouTube. We do holidays. In every holiday, we have a program now online, but usually at the Alma building. We have music on the roof. People come to hear songs and to talk about their words. We have a film program where we give the link to the film on Thursday, and you can watch it whenever you want. And on Monday, we have a meeting with the writer of the movie and some scholars from Alma. This week, tomorrow, Monday, there's a movie called Pigumim about it's about a very special educator and a special boy that his father makes him leave school and work with him in construction, and he wants to go on study. A very delicate and beautiful movie. And so there's a talk together with a famous philosopher of education and so on. So we try to, and we have many open new book kind of openings, and every evening before the coronavirus, every evening there was some different program at Alma. We do some English programming, but not enough, and I'm sorry for that, because the internet shows me now how close we are actually, and how possible it is to do things together. Every morning between 9 and 10, we study the daily page, and everyone can join. And it's very kind of easygoing and simple, and you don't need to know anything in advance. There are many more,
right.
That's...
So you and I talked, I think we're going to try bring some of this concept of the machloket to CSP in a partnership with Alma.
Wow.
So stay tuned for that. I did not know that you were the one who worked on, because I've noticed, I have a good friend, Rabbi Charlie Saviner in New York, who every year sends me the Tikkun Leil Shavuot stuff going on in the Upper West Side at the JC in Manhattan. So I didn't know that you were behind. I mean, it's really very impressive and something.
I'm proud to say that it was me.
And by the way, we were talking also, they're very, as Ruth mentioned, they're very connected with the artists and the musicians and the theater people in Israel. So hopefully we'll bring that to CSP. But but through Rachel Korazim, as many of you know, we've met some great musicians in Israel who are struggling. They have no jobs. They're not playing. They can't do concerts. They can't do weddings. They can't do bar mitzvahs. But we're raising money. And so this whole trip to Israel, the 16 programs is free. But if you want to make a donation to CSP of $36, we're collecting it. We have a challenge grant. One of our donors challenged us to raise $1,500, and she'll match it. So we can do a whole concert in November with 3 or 4 interesting musicians from Israel. So I hope you will participate and help us in that regard. Can you tell us a little bit about your family and your parents? You mentioned you had traveled around to the United States and to Australia. Was your dad or your mom, were they involved in a particular career that took you to those places, and how did that impact what you're doing?
My father was an entomologist. He worked in storage of agricultural products, mainly grains. So in Savannah, Georgia, we spent a year in I don't know what they do there, cotton, I think, and wheat. And in Canberra, Australia, it was wheat, and in Japan, and he worked in Africa and developing countries to keep their grains in silos. He actually was the advisor that built all the silos in Israel. And so I had the good opportunity of living as a Jew, as a minority, which is a very important concept for Israeli Jews to understand what it feels like to be the only Jew in school, or to be a Jew in Christmas, which are things that we don't understand here. We think, we live around our belly button. We think everyone is Jewish, and Hanukkah is the most important holiday. And suddenly when you are outside, you understand how challenging it is to keep yourself Jewish, and why people need communities and synagogues and so on. I learned a lot, and also I'm sorry to say that Israel is the only Jewish place in the world where a Jew cannot live freely as a Jew, as a liberal Jew. And so to see how America offers freedom of religion is something that I still look up to, and hope one day we'll be able to bring home. I just want to say that maybe now the internet will help in that, but there are not enough connections between Israelis and Jews in the world. I have a dream of building a kind of a Jewish Peace Corps like they used to have, where every young Jew in the world will give a year of service, either in their own community or another community, or in Israel, in the army, or in a hospital, or in agriculture, but everyone will give a year. And so Israelis won't have to give 3 years. And so they will meet each other, and they will know each other's community. And there's a lot to do to weave those young people together, because this is our family. That's what I learned from my parents. Wherever there is a Jew, I know they will be kind to me. They are my family, and vice versa. Of course, if you come to Israel, I hope that you feel immediately that you're at home, that it's yours, and that people will bring you home and try to be very kind to you if they pass their Israeli, rudeness. But it doesn't mean to be rude. Just
Well, I want to end with one question, but also I want to mention that those of you who were with us in 2017 know that we had dinner with Hillel Halkin on our first night, and I know we were exhausted, and the Schultzes were with us, and that was very challenging. I don't know if you know Hillel and his view of Judaism and world Judaism and Israel, but it was a very challenging but great presentation. And your presentation is another great, I think, opening event for our experience, and welcome to Israel. So I want to thank you for that. The question I want to end with is, where are the youth today? And maybe David Mendelsohn can add as well. The young people in Israel. So you've been dealing with a certain segment, I would say, but we're like the
you asked me about the audience, sorry.
Right, so is that generation, is the new generation now, they seem to be interested in their phones a lot like they do here in America, but are they interested in their Judaism, and do you see them as future people coming into Alma and part of this Jewish Renaissance in Israel, or are they interested in something else?
Can I answer, or David, do you want to?
You go first, and then if David would like to unmute, he could do that.
You know, I can't answer for all the youth in Israel, but I can tell you about my own son, Shaul. He finished high school and he went to Mechina. You know, that gap year program between high school and the army. He's now in the army, but he spent a year and a half studying Torah, first in Prat and then in the Golan, in Natur, and it was a huge experience for him. And he urges me to study Talmud with him whenever he comes home from the army. There's a big movement now of those young people that feel that it's natural for them to own their Judaism and that they don't need to be religious or this or that. They can just study and do. He asked me for talit when he went into the army, and then he asked me for tefillin. I was surprised and happy. And he has his free individual way of doing his Jewishness. So I wouldn't tell you it's hundreds of thousands of people, but the young, again, people that are interested in culture, the intellectuals, the people that will be, I think, the next generation leaders, feel today that it's natural for them to reclaim Jewish text. What was for me such a big revolution, and I had to, you know, answer questions, and people had fights with me. Today, and that's why I am grateful that our generation kind of built maybe the base, and they can now do much more. Another great advantage is that after those years of Jewish Renaissance, now the Israeli public school is teaching much more rabbinics alongside Bible and literature. And so I hope the next generation will be learned, will be educated much more. And then whenever you have, again, the building blocks, you can do anything with them. So I'm optimistic.
Thank you. David, I don't know if you could unmute if you would like to. You can participate as we end. If not, we'll have time with you as well, but you'd have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'll unmute myself. I just wrote to Ari privately, I'm having technical issues, so I'm actually staring into the camera, assuming you can see me, but I see nothing.
We can see you.
Okay, so in terms of the youth movement, I think that the primary inspiration has to comes in terms of our education, especially our Jewish education, and the idea of attaining more of a global view in terms of realizing that our Jewishness is as Kivanim does, is found by exploring other communities all over the world in which Jews are to be found, have successfully integrated, as in India. In fact, in India is probably the only place in the world where there never was any anti-Semitism at all. They were just one of the castes, which is another problem into itself. But my point is that by exploring other Jewish communities that follow, as Dr. Ruth Calderon said, follow the precepts, the basic precepts of what it is to be a Jew, and their own instinctual acceptance of other Jews calling themselves Jews and accepting them. There's something, when that starts being taught to our youth as part of the education system, you will start seeing profound change beginning to happen.
Thank you. So, gosh, I like to keep us on time, and I know that it's getting late in Israel. So I wanted to thank Ruth for being with us, and David for being with us from Israel as well.
Yeah.
And I want to thank all of you. I mean, at our height, we had close to 200 people on our trip. That's a lot of buses, virtual buses. And my friend Rabbi Savanor said I have to make some more room at the virtual hotel for you people. So we'll do that. We'll see you at the virtual refreshments shortly.
I can't open my door. There's too much laundry.
Right. A lot of laundry at David's house. But I hope you will join us. So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Toda rabba for having me.
You're welcome. Bringing the lost tribes back to Israel from India to Nigeria. And then tomorrow, at 12:30 p.m., 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Welcome to the old and new. Welcome Tel Aviv. We're gonna go on a tour of Ruth Calderon's city and see some sights. So we'll be in the streets and with the people. Thank you, everybody. It's been great having you here. And if you're on the West Coast, we have the whole day in front of us. If you're in the East Coast, you got most of the day. If you're in Israel, you have, it's time for bedtime. And Ruth, we hope to, let's work together to do something with Alma and CSP.
I would love that.
Like the Machloket idea. Let's do that. And some other programs. And Schultzes, thank you for joining us. They're my neighbors. The Schultzes, Harris and Jan have come to every CSP trip, the real trips and now the virtual trips. So I am keeping track. We have 16 programs. Whoever attends the most programs, there will be some special rewards. I also urge you to have a travel journal. It's in the orientation materials. So you should write down notes of things you've learned, the people you've met. And with that, everybody, have a great Sunday. Go back to your football games. Or maybe read a Jewish book. I don't know what you want to do today, but do something great with your day. Gail Geffon, this is your 20th trip to Israel. I know 19. Wow. No, 19. Okay. So, and nice to, some of you I never met, I don't know, but nice to see you. Miriam Harris, nice to have you with us. And the Podlesses, who are regulars, nice to have you. What a great way to start our adventure. Nice shirt. I was looking actually online. If anybody can help me, I was looking for a really cool shirt for Israel to wear. And I have to say, I'm very sad. That's cool. It's nice. Yes. Okay. I see that. But there are very few. I don't know. There certainly are not cool Israel hats. I don't know. So someone out there, please send me an email. I gotta get some shirts available so I can wear some stuff over the next few days. Lindy Kaiser, is always lovely having you with us. Looking forward to adventuring with you. So see you guys tomorrow, okay? 2 programs tomorrow, different tracks. You gotta sign up for each track. Ruth Calderon, thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you for everyone that wrote. I
want to thank my dad, Aubrey Katz, who's with us from the East Coast as well. Dad, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the program and will join us for as many programs. We are recording programs. They'll be up on our CSP YouTube channel. So if you miss it, you want to share it, please do. If you have friends who would like to join us in Israel, please invite them. This is the most cost-effective way to go to Israel right now. Okay, guys? So please do, and have a happy Sunday, everybody.
I'm happy to share my email if anyone wants it.
Okay, I will. What I'll do is when I do a follow-up email and I share this, I will. If you really want me to, you'll get a lot of emails from our people.
I'm happy to meet all of you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll share your email. I'll share stuff about the film you mentioned. We have people who speak Hebrew who can definitely do some of the Hebrew programs and like the film stuff. But yes, we've got to have some English stuff as well, and let's work on that. So thank you, everybody. Have a great Sunday. And yes, I will send you the name of the children's books as well. And that's it. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Good to see you all. Bye-bye.